السلام عليكم. ربنا يحفظنا جميعا من كل سوء، وعشان الظروف اللي احنا فيها باذن الله تعالى هنتقابل مع حضراتكم اونلاين لحد ما الازمه دي تنتهي باذن الله. Our course, if you remember, Advanced Cost Accounting. Our aim of this course is to provide information to help managers in one of their activities, controlling. How to control manufacturing costs of the company. 4 steps, if you remember. Firstly, setting the standards for direct material and direct labor and budgets for manufacturing overhead. Secondly, calculate actual cost. Thirdly, comparing between the actual cost and standard cost to determine the variances. Step number 4, analyzing the variances. In previous lectures, if you remember, we have 3 reasons for the variance, may be related to direct material or direct labor or manufacturing overhead. In previous lectures, I began with you speaking about direct material variance analysis. I know my lecture today about direct labor variance analysis, but in 1 minute, if you know how to analyze direct material variance analysis, you know 100% how to analyze direct labor also. If you remember, firstly, for direct material, we have to set standards. According to the cost of direct material, how to calculate the cost of direct material, if you remember? Quantity times price. So we set 2 standards. One of them, we set the quantity per unit. And the second, we set standards price per unit. After setting the standard, don't forget again, when we set a standard, we set standard per unit. This is our problem. But when I analyze my variances, I speak about my actual production, not per unit. After determining the standards, I calculate the actual cost and the standard cost to determine the total variance of direct material. Again, the total variance of direct material is the difference between actual cost and standard cost. My problem, what are the reasons of direct material? According to the elements of costs of direct material, we have quantity and price. We can say we have 2 variances, mainly 2 variances for direct material. Quantity variance and price variance. Again, when I say variance, I mean actual minus standard. So when I speak about quantity variance is calculated using the difference between actual quantity and standard quantity. Like quantity variance, we calculate also price variance. The price variance is calculated also by comparing between actual price and standard price. If actual price more than standard price, or actual quantity more than standard quantity, we say we have unfavorable variance. But if actual price or quantity less than, we say we have favorable variance. How can you analyze and determine the quantity variance and price variance of direct material? We can use what we say in accounting 2-way. I have 2 reasons only, or 3-way and 4-way. All of them are explained in details in previous lectures. If you know what we mean by 2-way, 3-way, and 4-way for direct material, I can now begin with the second part of variance analysis. I mean direct labor variance analysis. Like direct material. What is the first step in direct material? When I set standard for direct material. Here also, I will set standard for direct labor. How to calculate direct material cost? Do you remember? Quantity times price. How to calculate direct labor cost? Not quantity and price, but we say hours and rate. So when I set standards for direct material, I set standard for quantity and price. But when I set standards for direct labor, I will set standards rate like price in direct material, and standard hours per unit like quantity for direct material. Again, if you know direct material, you will know 100% direct labor. Difference between quantity and direct material, we say direct quantity variance. Difference between price for direct material, we say price variance. Now, here I don't have quantity, I have hours. Instead of quantity in direct material, we have hours in direct labor. We don't say hours variance, no. But we say here in direct labor, efficiency variance. Again, efficiency variance. So we can say efficiency variance like quantity variance in direct material. How to calculate efficiency variance? The difference between actual hours and standard hours. The second one, we calculate rate variance, very simple, like price variance. How to calculate price variance in direct material? The difference between actual price and standard price. Here also, how to calculate rate variance for direct labor? The rate variance is the difference between actual rate and standard rate. Again, in direct material, we have quantity, we say quantity, and price, we say price. But in direct labor, we have hours and rate. And instead of we saying hours, we have efficiency variance. And the rate, we would say rate variance. There is no problem. After determining the variances, how can you analyze the direct material variance analysis? We have two ways. Using two-way or three-way. From a point of view, I can't accept four-way for direct labor. Why? We have conditions to apply four-way for direct material. If you remember, firstly, I have more than, and I use more than one kind of direct material. Secondly, I have ability to replace one material by another one. But here I have many laborers. And how can I replace engineers or skilled laborers or workers by unskilled workers? Maybe it is difficult actually. So I will concentrate only how to analyze direct labor variances using two-way and three-way. But I can accept four-way for direct material. How to analyze using two-way, I mean direct labor. Using two-way, I can prepare performance reports or equations. Again, for direct labor, two-way analysis, I can calculate and analyze the variances of total variance of direct labor using performance report or using equations. Firstly, I will begin with performance report. Don't forget, if you know how to prepare performance report in direct material, it will be the same if I will prepare it using direct labor costs. Do you remember performance report? In direct material, we have actual cost, standard cost. What is the actual cost indirect material. Actual quantity, actual price, standard quantity, here in indirect labor, very, very simple. Indirect material we have quantity. Instead of quantity we say Q as abbreviation here. For price, P. What is the difference between analysis indirect material and direct labor? This is the difference. This is the first difference. Instead of quantity, here we say hours. So instead of Q, we will put H in our performance report or in our equations. Also, in direct material we have price or P. In direct labor, instead of P, we have rate, so R. Again, all equations the same. The performance report will be the same, but instead of Q will be H and P will be R. So, how to prepare performance report? Don't forget me. I told you, here I have 3 parts of performance report. The first part, actual cost. For direct labor, the actual cost will equal actual hours times actual rate. Don't forget how to calculate the total variance. The total variance equals what? Equals actual minus standards. So the last part in my performance report will be what should be. What should be? We say standard hours. Standard hours here with another color. Standard hours times standard rate. Again, in the first part, pure actual. Actual hours, actual rate. In the last part, pure standard. Standard hours and standard rate. If I compare between the first and the third one, I mean the actual cost and the standard cost, I will get the total variance. Again, the total variance. My problem, how to analyze the total variance. This is the total variance of direct labor. What are the reasons of total variance? Don't forget, we have 2 reasons up till now. We have 2 reasons. One of them is the difference between hours or the difference between rates. The difference between hours, we say efficiency variance. And the difference between rates, we say rate variance. How to analyze the total variance between the rate and the efficiency? This way. Again, this way. In the middle of the performance report, here I have, it's a pure actual, pure standard. The difference between them may be difference in hours or difference in rates. What about in the middle? I will fix one of them, hours or rates. If you remember me, I will choose from A, actual hours, and from standard cost, I will use standard rate. So, in the middle, I will get what? Actual hours times standard rate. So, in the first amount here, I have actual cost, actual hours, actual rate, but in the middle, I have actual hours and standard rate. So, if I want to calculate the difference between 1 and 2, here's the same hours. So there is no difference related to hours because I have the same hours, but the difference related to rates. The difference between 1 and 2, here I have actual rate and standard rate. So if I want to determine which kind of variances is the difference between 1 and 2, it's rate variance. Again, rate variance. How to calculate rate variance? Here I have actual hours, actual rate. Here I have actual hours, standard rate, so the difference between rates. What about the difference between 2 and 3. Here I have actual hour standard rate, standard hour standard rate. Here, my common factor here is standard rate, the same rate. So the difference between two amounts, not rate, but hours. The difference here is the actual hours and standard hours. In direct labor variance analysis, we don't say hours variance, we say efficiency variance. So the difference between 2 and 3 will be efficiency variance. Again, efficiency variance. Don't forget, I have total variance, and the reasons are two. One of them rate, and the second is efficiency. So you have to check your answer. I mean, I explain why I have this total variance. So the total of rate variance plus efficiency variance must equal total variance. Again, must equal total variance. This, like 100%, the performance report of direct material variance analysis, if you remember. Instead of quantity and price, here we have efficiency and rate. If you know the form of performance report, or how to performance report, my problem is how to calculate. How to calculate actual hours, actual rate, standard hours, standard rate, and subtract and add. I speak about math, not cost accounting especially. How can you prepare practically by numbers the performance report? Let me explain example number 1, especially for preparing performance report for direct labor. Here I have a company, regardless its name, has the following direct labor standard, so this problem for direct labor. Maybe you'll find a problem like this when I spoke about direct material standard in previous lecture. If you remember, direct labor standard per unit. It is not new, because I set the standard per unit of production. Here 1.2 standard hours per unit. This standard hours per unit at $10 per hour. Here I have standard hours per unit and standard rate per hour. Last month, employees actually worked 2,500 hours. Again, actually worked hours. You have to know what does it mean. It means it's actual hours. Again, actual hours. At a total labor cost of 26,250. Again, total cost. Actually worked, actually cost. So this is the total cost of labor to make 2,000 units. To make 2,000 units, I speak about actual production units. Everything after last month is actual. Actual hours, actual cost, actual production units. If you have this information for this company, and I ask you to prepare performance report. How to prepare performance report? Don't forget our performance report. This is our performance report. So if you know your performance report, your problem is how to remember the form. Secondly, how to calculate actual cost, standard cost, and in the middle, actual hours times standard rate. So how to calculate? This is my problem. I told you, the first step, before analyzing, again analyzing direct material, direct labor, manufacturing overhead, preparing performance report, preparing equation, 2, 3, 4 way for direct material, or here 2 or 3 way for direct labor. You have to calculate your amounts firstly. Then, after calculating your actual costs, your standard cost, you can prepare your performance report. You can use them to prepare equation. The rest will be very simple. If your amounts is are calculated firstly correctly, everything will be correct بإذن الله. The first step, don't forget how to calculate. I prepare a table. 2 parts in my table. One of them, actual costs. The second, standard costs. Regardless, I speak about direct material or direct labor. For direct labor here, I have actual hours, actual rate, and actual cost. I will get actual cost, actual hour times actual rate. The same for actual, I will recalculate using standard. Here I need standard hours allowed. Again, here you have a problem. Here you have equation. Because I need standard hours allowed for production. But actually, I set standard per unit. Per unit. But here allowed for production. So you have to calculate how many hours you need. Standard rate and standard cost. If I go back to my problem again, actual, this is actual. Actual worked hours. It's actual hours. And I have the total cost. I have actual hours and the total cost, but I don't have actual rate. It's not very simple. If I have actual hours and actual cost, I can get actual rate. This is how to calculate the actual cost. Again, you have actual hours 2,500 and you have actual cost 26,250. So how to calculate the actual rate? I will divide actual cost by actual hours to get actual rate. After finishing actual data, I have the second part of my course, standard hours, standard rate, and standard cost. I will go back again to my problem. Here I have standard hours per unit, 1.2 per unit. This here actually worked 2,500 hours, not per unit, it's for production. And here I have 10 per hour as standard rate per hour. How to calculate standard hours allowed? Don't forget, here I have equation, like indirect material, 100%. Actual production units times standard hours per unit. Again, here I have actual production is 2,000 times 1.2 per unit. So the standard hours allowed for actual production is 2,400. And standard rate is given, no problem, it's 10, so I can calculate the cost. If I have allowed hours 2,400 and standard rate is 10, so very simple. If I have actual cost and standard cost, how to prepare performance report? Don't forget. The first step, actual. The last step here, or the last part I mean here, will be standard, and in the middle I will use actual hours from the first part and standard rate from the last part. Firstly, cut and paste in the first part. Again, don't forget actual hours, 2,500, actual rate, 10.5, and this is my actual cost. What is the first part in my performance report? This is my performance report, first part. Again, first part. And the last part is what? Is a standard. What about my standard? Standard hours, standard rate, and standard cost. What about in the middle? From number 1, I have actual hours. This is my actual hour, 2,500. And from standards, I will use only standard rate, standard rate. So now I have three amounts. One of them pure actual and pure standard, and in the middle I have actual hours times standard rate. The difference between 1 and 2, don't forget, I need its name and the amount and the sign. The difference between 1 and 2, its name is what? Rate variance. Again, rate variance. And the amount, the difference between 1 and 2 is this 26 minus 25. 26 more than, so on, positive. 1,250. Because it is positive, it means the actual more than standard, or actual P, so I have unfavorable. Unfavorable. The difference between 2 and 3, the name, efficiency variance. And the amount, here also 25 minus 24, it will equal 1,000. Positive means unfavorable. This is my rate variance, or the variance related to the difference between rates, and the variance related to the difference between hours, or efficiency variance. If I compare between 1 and 3, I will get the total variance. This is my total variance. The total variance is the difference between actual and standard. Again, actual and standard. And you have to check your answer. The difference between 26 minus 24 here is positive 2,250, unfavorable. If I want to read, if I am a manager, if I want to read the performance report, from the bottom, I have total variance of direct labor, unfavorable, 2,250. What are the reasons? Two reasons. One of them, rate variance, and this amount for rate variance, and the second is efficiency variance, and the total of them must be equal. This is how to prepare performance reports. Again, how to prepare performance report in direct labor. Very simple. If you know direct material, you know how to prepare direct labor performance report, and equations also. In two ways, I told you that I can prepare performance report or equations. Again, equations. How can you create the equations of direct labor variance analysis? Let me assume that we have here hours and rates, and here I have standard hours, actual hours, and standard rate, actual rate. When I speak about this part, standard hours and standard rate, I speak about standard cost. This part of my graph is standard cost. But when I speak about actual hours and actual rate here, I speak about actual cost. So what is the problem? This is my standard cost. What should be? This is my actual cost. What happened actually? This part is the difference between them. The difference between them, I mean actual cost more than standard cost, we say variance. What are the reasons of this variance? Maybe the difference between hours or difference between rates. Don't forget, I need to calculate the total amount of this part of my graph. The difference between standard hours, sorry, actual hours and standard hours, we say efficiency. But the difference between actual rate and standard, like its name, rate variance. How to calculate this amount? In two ways, I have only two variances. One of them efficiency, and the second is rate. How to calculate efficiency? This is how to calculate efficiency. Okay? The difference between what? Actual hour and standard hours. I need this part, only this part. If you calculate this part, I will use what? Standard rate. Again, how to calculate efficiency variance. Efficiency variance will equal what? Actual hours minus standard hours times what? Standard rate. What about this space here? It related to the difference between rates. Now, rate variance. But how to calculate the rate variance? Actual rate minus standard rate times what? Again, times what? Actual hours. Again, times actual hours. I will stop here at the end. This is my rate variance. Okay. So if you know this graph, you can imagine your equation. These are my equations. Labor efficiency variance will equal what? Actual hours minus standard hour times standard rate. Labor rate variance will equal actual rate minus standard rate times actual hours. Again, times actual hours. But here times standard rate. If you know the equations, you can calculate the variances. Very simple. I will repeat again. If I have the same example and I ask you not to calculate the variances using performance report, but using equations, here my first step, the same first step. You have to calculate, again you have to calculate, it's your problem. You have to calculate the actual and standard. After calculating the actual and standard, this is my table. I will calculate the total variance. In performance report, indirectly I have total variance. But equations, I don't have total variance. So you have to calculate total variance firstly. How to calculate total variance? From my table. Actual cost minus standard cost. Again, actual cost minus standard cost. Here's my total variance is positive, unfavorable. This amount. I ask myself, why I have this total variance of direct labor? Maybe efficiency, maybe rate. How to calculate? From a point of view, very simple. If you know the equation, you will use the amounts. The first variance is efficiency. Do you remember? Efficiency variance. You have to remember. Again, you have to remember. Efficiency difference between rates. No, between hours. Don't forget. Actual hours minus standard hours. Times what? Times the standard rate. Don't forget my equation. What about rate? Rate, the difference between rates. Actual rate minus what? Standard rate times actual hours. Again, in two-way equations. I will multiply difference between hours in rate, or difference between rate in hours. But in two-way, one of them I will use standard, and the second I will use actual. I will use the standard for efficiency, standard times standard rate, but I will use actual hours for rate. These are my equations. The first one is what? Efficiency. How to calculate efficiency? Actual hours minus standard hour times standard rate. Here I have the amounts. Don't forget, this is my amounts from my table. Actual hours, standard hours times standard rate. This is my amount. Positive 1,000. Unfavorable. What is the second reason? Don't forget. The first one is efficiency. The second is rate. The rate is the difference between actual rate and standard rate times actual hours. Again, actual rate, standard rate, and here I have actual hours. Again, if you have correct amounts, you will get correct variances without any problem. Okay? Don't forget, I have total variance. 2,250 unfavorable. What are the reasons? These are my two reasons. So if you check your answer, you have to check that the total variance must equal the total of efficiency and rate variance. Again, efficiency and rate variance. Okay? Again, this is my equation if I speak about two-way. What about three-way? What is the difference between two and three-way? Don't forget, the same. Again, the same. This variance, according to three-way, I will divide it into three parts, not two parts. The first part is the same. We say pure efficiency variance. So I don't have many equations to calculate efficiency variance, only one. But for rate, I will divide rate into two parts. Again, rate in two-way will be two parts in three-way. The first one here we say pure rate variance. I will not use actual hours, but I will use standard hours. Again, how to calculate pure efficiency? Difference between hours times standard rate. How to calculate rate variance? Difference between rates times standard hours. Both of them standard. What about this part? What is the reason? The reason is the difference between what? Between hours and difference between rates. Now here, the difference only according to efficiency. This part only according to rate. But this part is joint variance. Again, joint variance. So what are the three variances of direct labor? Three variances are the first one, pure efficiency variance, pure rate variance, and joint variance. How to calculate them using equation. How to prepare the equations firstly. This is my equations. Again, this is my equations. The first efficiency variance equation is the same. Actual hours minus standard hours times standard rate. The second, my rate variance, actual rate. Here, not times actual hours like two-way, but times standard hours. And the difference between hours times difference between rate to calculate joint variance. The same problem, the same amounts, but instead of asking you to calculate the variances using two-way, here I have three-way. Again, how to calculate and analyze the direct labor variances using three-way. Don't forget our steps. Again, don't forget our steps. The first step is the table. The second is the total variance. The third is the difference between 2 and 3. I mean, you have to calculate the amounts firstly. You have to calculate the total variance. You have to ask yourself, what are the reasons? Maybe 2 reasons, maybe 3 reasons, or indirect material, maybe 4 reasons. According to three-way, I have 3 reasons. The first one is efficiency, don't forget. Actual hours minus standard hours times standard rate. And the second, rate, the difference between rates times standard hours from my table. And the third one is what? Joint variance. Okay. The joint variance is the difference between actual hours, standard hours, actual rate. Here by amounts. 2,500 minus 2,400, I have positive 100 is the difference between hours. Times 10.5 minus 10, positive also 0.5. Positive times positive will equal positive. Don't forget how to multiply different signs. If one of them negative and the second is positive, or both of them negative, you have to multiply like material. Here I have positive 50, unfavorable. Again, don't forget to check your answer. I want to analyze. Why I analyze? To answer a question. What is the question? What are the reasons of total variance? Again, my total variance, if you remember, is 2,250 unfavorable, and the reasons are 3. efficiency, rate, and joint if I speak about three-way, or efficiency and rate only if I have two-way. This is the maximum information on how to analyze the direct labor analysis. But before speaking about direct labor analysis, you have to know 100% the direct material analysis, how to analyze direct material. In next lecture, بإذن الله, I will explain how to analyze the third part of manufacturing cost, or manufacturing overhead. Again, if you know direct material, you know little bit different direct labor. If you know direct labor, and you have to know direct labor to know بإذن الله how to analyze manufacturing overhead. Our rest of my slides here, very simple. It's another question using MCQ. Regardless MCQ or calculate, if I ask you to calculate labor efficiency, rate variance, regardless the requirement, first you have to calculate. And then if I ask you MCQ in exams in future, Bismillah, you have to calculate efficiency variance, this equation for efficiency variance. And then you choose here also for rate variance. From my point of view, it's enough today to explain everything about the direct labor, and in future I will complete, Bismillah, speaking about variance analysis of the third part. I told you manufacturing overhead, and I will repeat again how to analyze direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead, because I speak about one company, not direct material only, or direct labor only, or manufacturing overhead. Okay? شكرا. السلام عليكم.